Welcome to another deep dive from FoReel Talk, where we like to take a look at all that stuff you've been meaning to read.
And boil it all down to just the good stuff.
I'm Chris Clarity.
And I'm Paige Turner, your expert guide to today's topic.
Which is the surprisingly complex world of digital tracking.
Oh, it is complex.
We're going to uncover just how much those apps and websites you use every single day
Every day.
are watching every move you make online.
That's right.
You sent us a ton of research articles.
A lot of stuff.
Leaked documents even.
Yeah, it's a pretty hefty stack, and it paints a pretty unsettling picture, let me tell you, of how these companies are building these incredibly detailed profiles of all of us.
Based on everything we do online.
It's not just what you post or search for, Chris.
Right.
It's how they connect these seemingly harmless actions to build a disturbingly accurate picture of your life.
So to kick things off, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Or maybe the 800-pound gorilla glued to our phones.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Facebook. I think we all know by now that they're collecting data on us, but what's really going on behind the scenes?
Well, remember those cookies we're always told to clear?
Oh, yeah.
Turns out Facebook's moved on to something way sneakier.
What's that?
It's called browser fingerprinting.
Browser fingerprinting. Is that like a digital version of dusting for prints at a crime scene?
Kind of. It's about identifying your specific device, even if you're blocking or deleting cookies.
Why?
They look at things like your screen resolution,
Oh, wow.
the fonts you have installed, even tiny details about your browser settings,
Okay.
and how it loads graphics.
Yeah.
All of this creates a unique fingerprint that lets them track you across different websites and browsing sessions.
So even if I'm browsing in incognito mode, they can still see what I'm doing.
That's what a lot of people think.
Yeah.
But incognito mode mostly just hides your activity from other people using the same device.
Oh.
Websites themselves, they can still see what you're doing. And Facebook can use fingerprinting to link that activity back to your profile.
Okay, so even when I think I'm being all sneaky and incognito, Facebook, they're still watching me.
They are.
Not comforting at all.
Yep.
And it's not just about what we do on Facebook itself, right? They're following us all over the internet.
Absolutely. They are. Think about those links you click in Messenger or Facebook emails.
Okay.
They're embedded with tracking parameters.
Seriously. So even if I'm just clicking a link to a funny cat video, Facebook is taking notes.
Facebook is taking notes. Every click gives them data.
Yeah.
What you're interested in, who you're talking to, even how long you spend reading an article.
Oh, my goodness.
And then there's the big one, Facebook's off-Facebook activity tool.
I have heard of that, but I've always been too afraid to actually look into it. What does it actually show?
Brace yourself. It basically reveals that Facebook is tracking your activity on millions of websites.
Millions.
Not just social media or shopping sites. We're talking about healthcare websites, news sites, even, well, let's just say sensitive ones.
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah.
They're really building a detailed profile of our entire online lives. It's starting to feel less like a social network and more like a surveillance network.
Right.
What's fascinating here is how they're connecting all these seemingly insignificant actions into a larger picture of who we are.
Exactly. It's not about individual actions. It's about patterns. They can see what time you go to bed.
Oh, no.
What you buy, even predict your future behavior based on the data that they gather.
That's a little too Black Mirror for me. I think if Facebook is doing all this, I don't even want to know what Google's up to.
Don't worry, we'll get to Google. They have got their own bag of tricks.
Okay.
But before we move on, I think it's important to consider what all this Facebook tracking really means for our listeners.
Right, because it's easy to get numb to all this data collection talk, but this has real-world implications for our privacy and our autonomy.
Think about it. This data can be used to target you with very specific ads.
Okay. Influence your opinions, even impact your access to certain services. Yeah. It's a level of control that most people aren't even aware of.
I'm starting to feel like I need to go off the grid and live in a cabin in the woods.
You and me both.
But before I do that, let's move on to the other tech giant in the room.
Okay.
Google, they're all about organizing the world's information, but it feels like they're also organizing all of our personal information too.
Oh, absolutely. One of their more subtle methods is something called AMP.
AMP?
Accelerated Mobile Pages. You know how sometimes a web page loads really quickly on your phone?
Yeah, they're speedy little pages. I always thought that was just good web design.
It's partly that, but the catch is that Google actually hosts these AMP pages on their own servers.
Oh.
And that means they can track everything you read on them. We're talking about a massive number of news websites.
Really?
Like something like 60% of them use AMP.
Wow.
It's a lot.
So they're not just making pages load faster, they're using it as a way to snoop on what we're reading. Precisely, they're capturing data, like your device type, how long you stay on the page, even what links you click on. All that juicy information goes straight to Google.
Not cool. Google, not cool at all. And what about all that location data they collect? I mean, I get that maps need our location to work.
Sure.
But it feels like they're tracking our every move.
It goes way beyond maps. There's something called Sensor Vault.
Sensor Vault.
It's a feature on Android phones that collects incredibly precise geolocation data.
Wow.
We're talking about pinpointing your location down to about 3 feet.
3 feet. That's scary.
Yeah.
Accurate. What are they doing with all that location data?
Well, it's used for things like targeted advertising and traffic analysis, but it also raises some serious privacy concerns.
Wait, what?
Law enforcement can issue something called a Geofence warrant.
Geofence warrant.
Which basically allows them to request data from Google about all devices that were in a specific area at a particular time.
So they can basically draw a virtual fence around a location and see who was there. It sounds like something straight out of a dystopian novel.
It's a powerful tool, and it's been used in criminal investigations, but it also raises questions about the potential for abuse and overreach.
It's like they're creating a digital panopticon where we're constantly being watched and monitored, and they're trying to make it sound all friendly and helpful with names like Privacy Sandbox. Didn't we talk about that?
Right. Google's Privacy Sandbox is supposedly designed to replace those pesky third-party cookies.
Yeah.
Which on the surface sounds like a good thing.
Yeah. Less tracking. There's always a...
They're phasing out third-party cookies.
Okay.
But they're introducing a new system called the Topics API.
Topics API?
This system will categorize you into broad interest groups based on your browsing history.
Okay, so instead of tracking me as an individual, they're tracking me as part of a group. Does that actually make a difference?
Well, it's less individualized, sure, but these groups can still be based on pretty sensitive topics. Google's algorithms might infer things about you, like health conditions or political affiliations, based on your online activity, even if you never directly searched for those things.
Still feels like they're putting us in boxes, even if the boxes are a little bit bigger now.
That's a valid point, and it raises an important question.
What's that?
How comfortable are you with these companies having this much information about you, even if it's aggregated?
Not very. I'm starting to feel a little less comfortable by the minute. It's like, I get that personalized ads and recommendations can be helpful.
Sure.
But at what cost, you know?
That's the key question, isn't it? What are we willing to sacrifice for the sake of convenience?
Okay, so we've covered Facebook and Google, the reigning champions of data collection.
The heavy hitters.
But they're not the only players in this game, are they?
No, they are not.
What about Amazon?
Oh.
I have a feeling they're up to something, too.
You would be absolutely right. Amazon is a whole other level of data collection genius.
Oh, no.
If you want to call it that. But we've covered a lot of ground already, so why don't we take a pause here? And when we come back, we'll dive into the world of Amazon and uncover some of their more unsettling tactics.
Sounds good. I need a break.
Me too. Welcome back to the deep dive. Before the break, we were talking about Facebook and Google, but the plot thickens when we talk about Amazon.
Right, because if Facebook and Google are the kings of tracking our online lives, Amazon's got to be the emperor of knowing what we buy and probably what we'll buy next. It's like they have a crystal ball that shows them our shopping list before we even write it.
It's more like an algorithm than a crystal ball, but you're not far off. They've mastered this thing called anticipatory shipping, which is exactly as unsettling as it sounds.
Okay, remind me how this works again. They basically ship stuff to us before we even order it. Are we in some kind of sci-fi movie where convenience has gone too far?
It's not quite teleportation, but it's getting there. Amazon's AI analyzes your past purchases, browsing history, wish lists, even your Alexa voice recordings.
Okay.
They're so good at predicting what you want that they can actually trigger product movement to warehouses closer to you. So by the time you click buy, it's practically at your doorstep.
That is both impressive and alarming. If they're already shipping things before I even know I want them, what does that say about my free will? Am I just a puppet dancing to Amazon's algorithmic strings?
That's a pretty deep philosophical question, and one we might need a whole other deep dive to unpack.
Yeah.
But it does raise some important points about consumer behavior and the ethics of using AI to influence our choices.
Yeah, it's like, I appreciate the convenience, but I also want to feel like I'm the one making the decisions.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. And it's not just about the products themselves. They're gathering incredibly detailed data about our lives, what we eat, what we read, what we watch, even how we interact with our smart home devices. It all paints a very intimate picture of our daily routines and preferences.
Speaking of smart home devices, didn't Amazon launch something called the Sidewalk Network? I remember seeing something about that, but I didn't really understand what it was.
Ah, yes. Sidewalk, On the surface, it sounds like a nice neighborly way to extend your Wi-Fi coverage by creating a mesh network with nearby devices.
Right? Sharing is caring and all that. But there's got to be more to it, right?
There always is. The catch is that Amazon is collecting and transmitting location and connectivity data from all the devices on the Sidewalk network. So even if you don't have an Echo or a Ring doorbell if your neighbor does, and your devices connect to their Sidewalk network, Amazon's getting data from you.
Hold on. So even if I'm trying to be privacy conscious, my neighbor's tech choices could be impacting my own data footprint. It's like secondhand smoke, but for digital tracking.
It's a valid concern, and it highlights how these interconnected devices are blurring the lines of individual privacy. It's becoming increasingly difficult to opt out of data collection when it's woven into the very fabric of our digital lives.
This is getting more and more unsettling by the minute. It's starting to feel less like a deep dive and more like a descent into a data-driven abyss. So we've got Facebook tracking our clicks, Google mapping our every move, Amazon predicting our purchases. I'm almost afraid to ask, but who else is in on this?
Well, we've only just begun scratching the surface. Microsoft and X, formerly known as Twitter, also deserve their time in the spotlight. They might not be as flashy or ubiquitous as the big three, but they're still collecting and utilizing your data in ways you might not realize.
All right, hit me with it. What are Microsoft and X doing that's got our privacy alarm bells ringing?
Microsoft's all about telemetry data. They're constantly gathering information from Windows Office Bing and all their other services. It's like they're running a constant diagnostic check on your digital life. Monitoring system, performance error reports, usage statistics, and even your Bing search queries.
So even if I'm not actively using Facebook or Google, Microsoft is still keeping tabs on me just because I'm using their operating system or their Office suite. There's no escape.
It's becoming increasingly difficult to find a corner of the digital world that's truly private. And here's where it gets even trickier. Microsoft links this telemetry data across their different services.
Right.
So your activity on Windows could be connected to your LinkedIn profile, for example.
Wait, what? So my browsing history could potentially impact my job prospects. That's just wrong.
It's a reality we need to consider. Our online and offline lives are becoming increasingly intertwined, and the data that's collected in one realm can easily spill over into another.
It's like the digital walls are closing in. Okay, deep breaths. What about X, formerly Twitter? They've always been about tracking engagement and trending topics, but is there something more going on behind the scenes?
Of course. They're analyzing everything you do on their platform. Tweets, retweets, likes, replies, even your direct messages. And they're not just looking at what you're saying, they're using natural language processing to analyze the sentiment and meaning behind your words.
So they're trying to understand not just what we're saying, but what we're thinking and feeling. It's giving me major Big Brother vibes.
It's a powerful tool, and it can be used for things like targeted advertising, content recommendations, and even identifying potential mental health issues. But it also raises concerns about manipulation and the potential for misuse.
It's like they're reading our minds and using that information to control us. Okay, I officially need a break from all this doom and gloom.
I hear you. It can be overwhelming to realize just how much data is being collected and how it's being used. But before we take a break, there's one more group we need to talk about. The data brokers.
Data brokers. Who are they? I'm starting to feel like I'm entering a whole new level of the digital underworld.
These are the companies that operate in the shadows, buying and selling data from a vast network of sources. Think of them as the middlemen of the data world, collecting information from everywhere, websites, apps, loyalty programs, public records, and packaging it into these detailed profiles that they sell to other companies.
So even if I'm careful about what I share online and what apps I use, these data brokers are still gathering information about me from other sources. It's like they're digital detectives piecing together our lives without us even knowing it.
It's a pretty apt analogy. And these profiles can contain a staggering amount of information, everything from your purchasing habits and political leanings to your health conditions and even your estimated net worth.
It's like they know more about us than we know about ourselves. And what are these companies doing with all this data?
Well, it's used for everything from targeted advertising and risk assessment to credit scoring and even employment screening. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's largely unregulated.
This is getting seriously scary. It's like our personal data is being treated as a commodity to be bought and sold without our knowledge or consent. And if these data brokers are operating in the shadows, how can we even protect ourselves?
That's the million-dollar question, and one we'll definitely explore in more detail after we take a quick pause. When we come back, we'll talk about the steps you can take to reclaim some control over your data and fight back against this invasive data collection machine.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We just spent the last little bit uncovering all the depths of digital tracking. Facebook, Google, Amazon, Microsoft X, data brokers. Like, are they all in on it?
They're all in on it.
I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a little bit like I need to take a shower and just scrub off all the digital grime.
I hear you. It can be overwhelming to realize how much our lives are being monitored and commodified. But it's important to remember that we're not powerless. There are steps we can take to protect our privacy and fight back against this invasive data collection machine.
Give us the rundown. What can we actually do to reclaim some control over our data?
Let's talk about some of those tech tools that we've mentioned earlier, like LineageOS for your phone,
Okay.
Proton Unlimited for encrypted email and storage, and a good VPN like Mullvad. Think of these as your digital privacy toolkit.
So these are our weapons in the fight against all the trackers.
Exactly.
But how do we actually use these tools effectively? It can all feel a bit intimidating.
It's like learning a new language, Chris, but once you grasp the basics, it becomes second nature.
Right.
LineageOS, for example, is a de-Googled version of Android, so it removes all the Google apps and services that are known for tracking your activity.
So we can ditch the Google overlords and still have a functioning smartphone.
That's right.
Sign me up. What about Proton Unlimited?
Proton is all about encryption. Think of it as putting your emails and files in a locked box that only you and the intended recipient have the key to open. It's a great way to add an extra layer of security to your digital communications.
Makes sense. And VPNs, those are like our digital disguises, right?
Yeah.
Masking our IP address and making it harder for websites to track us.
Exactly. A VPN encrypts your internet traffic and routes it through a server in a different location.
Okay.
So to the websites you visit, it looks like you're browsing from somewhere else entirely.
I like it. So we've got our de-Googled phone, our encrypted communications, and our digital disguises. We're starting to look like a pretty formidable privacy task force.
I like the sound of that.
What about the legal side of things? Are there any laws that protect our data?
Well, there are some, like the CCPA in California and the GDPR in Europe, that give you some rights over your data. You can request to see what data companies have collected on you, and you can even ask them to delete it.
That's good to know. So we do have some legal recourse.
Yes.
But these laws aren't perfect, and they don't apply everywhere, right?
Unfortunately not. That's why we need to keep pushing for stronger privacy laws at the federal level.
Yeah.
We need comprehensive legislation that will give us real control over our data and hold these companies accountable for their actions.
So how do we make that happen? Do we just write angry letters to our elected officials?
Letters are a good start, but we need to do more than that. We need to organize, mobilize, and make our voices heard loud and clear. We need to demand that our privacy rights are respected both online and offline.
So we're talking about a full-blown digital privacy revolution.
I think so.
Count me in. But where do we start?
There are some amazing advocacy groups out there that are leading the charge. The Electronic Frontier Foundation, the ACLU Fight for the Future, just to name a few. These organizations are working tirelessly to educate the public lawmakers and challenge these invasive data collection practices in court.
Okay, so we can support these organizations, donate to their cause, amplify their message. What else can we do on an individual level?
Be mindful of the choices you make. Support businesses and organizations that are committed to privacy. Vote with your wallet and choose products and services that respect your data and prioritize your privacy.
Right. We need to reward the good guys and hold the bad guys accountable. It's all about making conscious choices and sending a clear message that we're not going to stand for this kind of exploitation anymore.
Exactly. And remember, this is not just about protecting ourselves. It's about building a better future for everyone. A future where technology is used to empower us, not exploit us.
That's a future I want to be a part of.
Well, folks, this has been a pretty intense deep dive into the world of digital tracking. We uncovered some pretty unsettling practices.
We did.
But we also explored some ways to fight back.
There's always hope.
It can feel really overwhelming with all this information. But hopefully you're leaving with a sense of empowerment, knowing that you do have options and your choices do matter.
They really do.
This is your data, your life, your future. Don't let them take it without a fight.
We're going to be sharing some additional resources in the show notes.
All the good stuff.
Including links to the organizations that we mentioned.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive from FoReel Talk.
Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode.
And let us know what you think. Leave a comment and tell us about your experiences with digital tracking. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay vigilant.